Hey folks, I'm Melhorn. If you're a subscriber to the channel, welcome back. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you subscribe, make sure you hit that little bell so you'll be notified when these new videos come out. So what I'm going to talk about today has nothing to do with killing anything or catching anything. It has to do with cooking something, and that is making barbecue. And you're probably wondering, well, why are you talking about this? Well, listen. Anybody that knows me, anybody that follows me on Facebook, Instagram, or on my fishing channel will know that sooner or later I'm going to be in a barbecue restaurant. I like barbecue. I grew up here in the South, born and raised, and it's part of the culture here. So I'm making this video for two reasons. One, I want to lower the intimidation factor of somebody trying it at home that's never done it, because I get people asking me questions about it all the time. They're scared to try it. Listen, my deal is pretty simple. I'm no pit master. I don't compete making barbecue. I don't do it catering for a living. I make it for the family and some friends when we're around here, and it's nothing super duper off the wall, special secret, any of that stuff. It's just good, simple barbecue. I'm going to tell you the way I do it. Now, I started out on a grill, basically about a 48-inch long grill, a round barrel style, about as old school as you can get. And I didn't know any better. I didn't understand that having the fire directly underneath it in a relatively close proximity to the meat, it's not a good thing when it comes to cooking barbecue. Now I'm up to an offset cooker, an offset firebox. It's got a firebox outside of the cooking chamber, still the big round barrel type looking cooking area, but the fire is in a separate chamber. A couple of reasons for doing this real quick. One, you don't have the heat directly underneath the meat. Second thing is, it's very easy to add more wood, more coals, whatever you're using to heat, to create your heat and your smoke. Without having to adjust that cooking chamber. Mine's a very simple cooker, not expensive at all. There are some high-end ones out there, and I'm going to tell you right now, you don't need to have those. If you got the money to do it and want to do it, great. There's nothing wrong with that. They'll all cook great, but you can do this and make some really good barbecue very affordably on a very cheap cooker. Now, all I'm using is just pieces of meat, Boston butts, if you will, is what you will see these named a lot of times, a pork shoulder. They're the same thing. They come in two different pieces generally. Sometimes they're together. Sometimes they are packaged separately, usually about 10 pounds per cut of meat. This is not from the butt of a pig. It is a name that comes from the packing process that they go through from way back when. This is actually off of the front shoulder of a hog. Pretty simple. We get them at Costco, Sam's, place like that, bring them home, crack them open in a sink, rinse them off. I dry them off and put them into a metal pan. And in that metal pan, you can do one or two things. You can sprinkle the dry rub directly onto the piece of meat as it is, pat it down, which is what I do in this video. Or you can put a light covering of mustard on there, just some yellow French's mustard. Gives you a little bit of a bonding agent and helps with that dry rub. Adhering to the meat a little bit better. Now, don't freak out over your rub recipe. I've got one that I use. It's pretty simple, uses some of the same basic components of a lot of the popular ones out there. But listen, people will argue about this to the end of time over which one's better, and you need to do this, you need to do that. The bottom line is, when you do this at home, you really are not going to do it wrong, even if you buy one from the store. A lot of these commercially made and sold rubs will do just fine. If that's what you want to start out with that. Your food is going to be fine. Don't stress over that part of it. Lather it up, make sure you have plenty, cover it up, and then what I do, once it's covered in the rub, make sure you get all sides of it. I cover the pan up in tin foil. I usually do this night before I'm cooking. Gives everything time to dissolve, break down, and get into the meat itself. Now, cooking barbecue for me means starting before the sun comes up. I'm out there before daylight, getting the fire going, getting it up to temperature. My temperature, I try to hit, it's around 220, 230, somewhere right in there. Don't stress out over this a lot. Somewhere in that range from 220 to 275, depending on how long you want to cook it and how much effort you want to put into it. The old saying, low and slow, is true and good, and that's what I try to go with, but you can make some pretty good barbecue, ramp the temperature up a little bit. Now, here's what I do. I kind of split mine a little bit. I get it onto the cooker, and I cook it and let it smoke for about 6 hours, around that 220, 230 temperature. At that point, I pull it off and wrap it in tin foil. I think they call it the Texas crutch. This is where we get to cheat a little bit, okay? This is where we get to cheat and step up the time here a little bit. Normally, you keep it at 220. It's going to take you on these 10-pound shoulders about 12 hours, 12, 13, 14, depending on what your hang time is like, to get it done. The crutch helps a little bit because at that point, I will ramp the temperature up to 275, 300, somewhere in there. The tinfoil helps hold in the moisture, keeps it from drying out. You don't have to worry about basting it. You can ramp up your temperature a little bit and get it done a little bit quicker. Now, one quick tip, remember that this meat will continue to cook for a little while after you pull it off. So usually I get mine to about 195, 96, 97, somewhere in there. I'll bring it in the house, sit it on the counter, and let it just sit in the tinfoil. That temperature will creep on up usually above 200, 205, 206, somewhere in there. That's really when the meat is very, very tender and just pulls apart. You can tell when you pull that bone out and there's nothing left sticking to it, you've done a good job cooking it. After that, it's just a matter of pulling the meat apart and separating out the different components. You'll notice as you start to pull one of these shoulders apart, there are different muscles and different pieces in there that are more tender, more stringy tube type meat. We'll save that for another day and another explanation, but there's different parts. Usually what I do is kind of pair them up together, or what a lot of people do is the tougher tuber, more tube material. You can chop up, mix it all together, and you got a good combination of juicy, tender, wonderful pork. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing, and here are a couple of more videos that I think you're going to like.